Hey guys, tonight let's slow things down a bit. Dim the lights, put your phone face down, get comfortable. Tonight we're not storming castles or poisoning popes. We're doing something much more exhausting. We're attending a family dinner, specifically an engagement dinner, which, historically speaking, has always been one of humanity's most effective ways to humiliate relatives in public while pretending it's about love. So let's begin with Lauren Hayes. Not a queen, not a duchess, but absolutely treated like a distant cousin who once tried to sell essential oils at Thanksgiving. Lauren arrives early. Of course she does. People who are always underestimated tend to arrive early. It's a quiet attempt at control, a way to ease into a room before it decides who you are. The restaurant is downtown, private, muted lighting, the kind of place where the menus don't have prices because if you have to ask, the answer is no. Everything here whispers success. The chairs are heavy, the tables are polished, even the water looks expensive. Lauren takes it in calmly. She's not impressed. She's also not intimidated. She's just tired. This isn't her first time playing this role. She knows the script. Her parents arrive next, well-dressed, confident, comfortable in rooms like this because rooms like this reflect back the story they like to tell about themselves. Her father shakes hands with the manager like they've known each other for years. Maybe they have, or maybe this is just how men of a certain age perform importance. Her mother scans the room, mentally approving. This place fits the narrative, which matters. Then comes her brother, the groom-to-be, smiling, relaxed, a man fully supported by the family mythology. He has titles they understand: realtor, investor, future patriarch, presumably. And finally, his fiancée, polite, observant, quiet in the way that suggests she's listening more than speaking. Everyone sits, and almost immediately, Lauren becomes decorative. Not ignored exactly, that would be obvious. This is subtler, more refined, like emotional fine china you don't actually plan to use. Conversation flows around her. Real estate markets, interest rates, who's buying where, who's flipping what. Lauren nods, smiles, sips her water. Someone mentions how uncertain things are right now. Someone else glances at Lauren while saying it, just briefly, as if her entire existence is a cautionary tale. Her mother asks her if she's still doing that work thing. Not what the work is, just that thing. Lauren answers calmly, yes. That's it. No elaboration, because elaboration, historically, has never gone well. Her father suggests, kindly of course, that she could always pivot, maybe into something more stable, maybe something local, maybe something people understand at dinner parties. Lauren smiles again. This is not weakness. This is conservation of energy. Throughout history, the people who survive court politics are not the loud ones. They're the ones who speak when it matters and stay silent when it doesn't. Plates arrive, expensive arrangements of food pretending to be minimalism. The conversation turns to the wedding, venues, guests lists, future grandchildren said far too early and far too confidently. Lauren is asked nothing. Not about her life, not about her plans, not about her work. Instead, assumptions fill the space. Someone mentions helping her get back on her feet someday. Someone else nods sympathetically, as if she's recovering from something unnamed but deeply unfortunate. Lauren listens. She's not angry. Anger would require surprise. This is familiar. This is the family's favorite version of her. The vague one, the incomplete one. The one who makes everyone else feel secure by contrast. Across the table, the fiancée notices things. She notices that Lauren answers questions fully when asked directly, and barely at all when she isn't. She notices the pauses, the way conversation skirts around Lauren rather than includes her. She notices that no one has actually asked Lauren what she does. So she does something radical. She asks, not loudly, not dramatically, just, "So Lauren, what do you work on?" The table stills, just a little. Lauren looks up, surprised. Not because the question is invasive, but because it's sincere. She answers simply, no buzzwords, no performance. I run a logistics and supply chain optimization platform. There it is, plain, unadorned. Silence follows, because that sentence does not fit the version of Lauren they've been carrying. Her brother blinks. Her father nods slowly, as if hoping more words will appear and make this understandable. Oh, her mother says, the universal sound of confusion pretending to be interest. Someone asks if it's stable? Lauren nods. Yes. Another pause. And then the fiancé does something that permanently alters the emotional architecture of the table. She reaches into her bag. Not dramatically, just casually, like this was always part of the evening. She pulls out her phone, scrolls, turns the screen. I've read about your company, she says, calmly. There were a few industry pieces and an investor profile. She names publications. She names markets. She names numbers. Nothing flashy, just facts. The table goes quiet in a way that feels different, heavier, more precise. Lauren doesn't interrupt. She doesn't correct. She doesn't expand. She lets the truth exist on its own. This is important. Throughout history, the most effective reversals are not delivered by the underestimated person themselves. They are delivered by witnesses. The fiancé isn't defending Lauren. She's acknowledging reality. Her parents look at Lauren now. Really look. Not with pride, not with anger, with recalculation. Her brother shifts in his seat because this version of Lauren disrupts the hierarchy, and hierarchies do not enjoy disruption. Someone asks why she never mentioned any of this. Lauren finally speaks more than one sentence. I was never asked. Her voice is calm, almost gentle. No accusation, just observation. Silence again. This time, no one feels it. The food cools, the mood changes. The narrative collapses quietly, like an old building condemned by inspection. Lauren finishes her meal. She thanks everyone, stands, leaves. No confrontation, no victory speech, just absence, which, historically speaking, is often the loudest statement of all. And as the door closes behind her, the table is left with something far more uncomfortable than anger. They are left with accuracy. Let's drift gently into the aftermath next time. Part 2. The aftermath, or how silence finally changed its allegiance. So, Lauren leaves the restaurant, not in a rush, not in tears, just calmly, like someone who has finished a task and doesn't need to linger near the printer anymore. Outside, the city hums. Cars pass, people laugh. Someone nearby is very excited about a dessert. Life, inconveniently, continues. Lauren pauses on the sidewalk, takes a breath. Not a dramatic one, just enough to reset her nervous system back to neutral. Inside the restaurant, things are different now. No one knows quite what to say, which is unusual for people who normally have opinions about everything. Her father clears his throat, a classic move, historically favored by men who sense authority slipping but aren't sure where it went. Her mother rearranges her napkin, also a classic, a quiet ritual signaling internal discomfort. Her brother stares at his plate, which is impressive because 5 minutes ago he was narrating his 5-year plan with diagrams. The fiancée sits back, observing. She hasn't smiled, she hasn't apologized, she hasn't explained herself, because she doesn't need to. The problem with underestimating someone for years is that when the truth finally shows up, it doesn't feel enlightening, it feels embarrassing. And embarrassment, unlike anger, has nowhere to go. The dinner limps to its end. Bills are paid, goodbyes are said. Everything is polite, too polite. Lauren's parents go home that night and do what people have done for centuries when confronted with inconvenient information. They revise history. Well, her mother says, she never told us. Her father nods, as if this settles it, because if they didn't know, then they couldn't have been wrong, and if they weren't wrong, then nothing needs to change. This is a very old strategy, used by monarchs, used by families, used by anyone who prefers comfort over accuracy. Lauren, meanwhile, goes home and sleeps better than she has in weeks, not because she feels triumphant, but because something heavy has been set down. For the first time, she didn't perform, didn't explain, didn't soften herself for comprehension. She let misunderstanding exist, and then she left. The next morning, her phone is quiet. No angry messages, no apologies, just nothing, which tells her everything she needs to know. Historically speaking, silence after revelation usually means one of two things. Either reconciliation is being planned, or avoidance has won. In this case, it's the second one. Days pass. Lauren goes back to work. Meetings, emails, decisions that affect supply chains across multiple time zones. Her work does not pause for emotional revelations at family dinners. It never has. And that's part of the irony. Her family has spent years assuming she was drifting, uncertain, unstable. Meanwhile, she has been managing complexity quietly because real responsibility rarely announces itself loudly. A week later, her mother texts. Nothing dramatic, just, "Hope you're doing okay." Lauren reads it, doesn't answer right away, because this message is not about her well-being. It's about easing discomfort. Eventually, she replies politely, briefly, "I'm fine," which is true. Her brother does not reach out, not because he's angry, but because reaching out would require acknowledging a new reality, and that's exhausting. His fiancée, however, does send a message. "Good to finally meet you properly," it says. Lauren smiles at that, because it's accurate. For years, her family met a version of her they invented, not the one who actually existed. And now that the invention has been disproven, no one is quite sure how to proceed. This is where the story would usually end if this were a dramatic tale. There would be shouting or tears or reconciliation over coffee. But this isn't that kind of story. This is a quieter one. Lauren notices small changes over the following months. Family gatherings become less frequent. Invitations are vaguer. Plans are made without her, then mentioned casually later. This isn't punishment, it's recalibration. When someone no longer fits neatly into the hierarchy, the system adjusts to minimize friction. This is not unique to Lauren. This is how courts worked, how noble families operated, how power structures preserve themselves. Lauren doesn't chase inclusion. That's important. She doesn't suddenly demand recognition. She doesn't correct people aggressively. She just stops shrinking, which is deeply unsettling to those who benefited from her smallness. At one point, her mother suggests lunch. They meet at a cafe, neutral ground. The conversation is careful, polite, a little strained. Her mother asks more questions now, about work, about travel, but the questions are tentative, like she's afraid of discovering more things she doesn't understand. Lauren answers honestly, but briefly, because trust, once depleted, refills slowly. At the end of lunch, her mother says something revealing. "I just wish you'd told us sooner." Lauren pauses, then says, gently, "I tried." That's all. No argument, no list of examples, just truth. They part ways. Nothing is resolved, but something is clarified. Lauren no longer feels responsible for managing their expectations, and that is a significant shift. Historically, people who step out of assigned roles are often labeled difficult or distant or ungrateful. Lauren accepts this because the alternative is pretending to be smaller forever. Months later, the wedding happens. Lauren attends, of course she does. She is cordial, calm, unassuming. Some relatives treat her differently now, a little more cautious, a little more respectful. Others don't, and that's fine. She no longer needs uniform approval. The fiancé, now officially part of the family, makes a point to sit with her, to include her, to ask real questions, which changes the dynamic subtly, but permanently. Power structures rarely collapse all at once. They erode. Lauren leaves the reception early, not out of discomfort, but because she has an early call the next morning with a team in another hemisphere, because her life continues. And that, ultimately, is the quiet victory here. Not that her family was silenced, but that their silence no longer defines her. Lauren doesn't frame the engagement dinner as revenge. She doesn't replay it obsessively. She remembers it as a moment of alignment, when who she was finally matched what she allowed others to see. And once that alignment happens, it's very hard to go back. Next time, we'll gently drift into how people like Lauren tend to be written out of family legends, and why that might actually be a relief.